Have you ever felt like you're the only one standing up for what you believe in? Imagine being a prophet in a nation that has almost completely turned its back on God. That's exactly where we find the prophet Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 18. The scene is set in Israel during the reign of King Ahab and his notorious wife, Jezebel. They had led the people into worshiping a false god named Baal, the so-called god of rain and fertility. And to make matters worse, there was a severe drought in the land, a direct consequence of their disobedience, just as God had warned. The people were stuck, torn between two opinions. Do we follow the Lord, the God of our ancestors, or do we follow this new popular god, Baal? It was a time of deep spiritual confusion and crisis. The nation was divided, and its heart was far from God. Into this tense situation steps Elijah, a man on a mission from God. He confronts King Ahab head-on, not with a sword, but with a challenge, a divine showdown. Elijah doesn't just want to win an argument. He wants to win back the hearts of his people for the one true God. So he proposes a public contest on top of Mount Carmel. It would be him, the lone prophet of the Lord, against the 450 prophets of Baal. The challenge was simple and dramatic. Let's see whose God can answer with fire. 2 bulls would be prepared as sacrifices, one for Baal and one for the Lord. They'd be placed on 2 separate altars of wood. But here's the catch. No one was allowed to light a fire. The God who answered by sending fire from heaven to consume the sacrifice, he is the true God. The people loved the idea. It was a clear, undeniable test. The stage was set for one of the most epic confrontations in the entire Bible. The day of the showdown arrives. Mount Carmel is buzzing with people. On one side, you have the 450 prophets of Baal, confident in their numbers and royal backing. On the other, you have Elijah, standing alone for the Lord. Elijah lets the prophets of Baal go first. From morning until noon, they cry out, "O Baal, answer us!" They dance and limp around their altar, working themselves into a frenzy. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. The silence from the sky was deafening. As the hours dragged on, Elijah, with a bit of holy sarcasm, starts to mock them. "Shout louder," he says. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or maybe he's busy or on a journey, or perhaps he's sleeping and must be awakened. His taunts spur them on. They get even more desperate, shouting louder and, according to their custom, cutting themselves with swords and lances until their blood gushed out. They prophesied and raved all afternoon, but still nothing, just an empty sky and a silent, unconsumed sacrifice. Their gods were powerless. Now it's Elijah's turn. The sun is starting to set, and the crowd watches intently. What will this lone prophet do? He doesn't just use the existing altar. He gathers 12 stones, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and rebuilds the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. This was a powerful symbolic act. He was reminding the people of their unified identity and their covenant with God. He wasn't just proving God's power. He was calling the nation back to its foundations. He carefully arranges the wood, cuts the bull into pieces, and lays it on the altar. Then he does something that seems completely counterintuitive. He commands the people to fill 4 large jars with water and pour it over the sacrifice and the wood. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Water floods the altar, soaking the wood and the meat, and even fills the trench he had dug around it. There is absolutely no way this thing could light by natural means. Elijah is making the miracle impossible for man so that only God could get the glory. He is demonstrating complete faith that God's power is not limited by human obstacles. With the stage perfectly set for a divine display, Elijah steps forward. He doesn't shout, dance, or work himself into a frenzy. He simply prays. It's a short, powerful, and direct prayer. He says, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me. So these people will know that you, Lord, are God and that you are turning their hearts back again." His prayer wasn't about him. It was about God's glory and the restoration of his people. He wasn't trying to prove he was right. He was asking God to reveal his own truth. It was a prayer of humble faith, expecting a great God to do a great thing, and then it happened. Instantly, fire from the Lord fell from the sky. This wasn't just a little flame, it was a divine inferno. It consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones of the altar, and the soil. It even licked up the water that was in the trench. Everything, gone in a flash of heavenly fire. The demonstration was absolute and undeniable. There was no room for doubt or alternative explanations. God had answered, not with a whisper, but with a roaring declaration of his power and presence. The people's reaction was just as immediate. When they saw this, they fell prostrate on the ground. The spiritual confusion vanished. In unison they cried out, "The Lord, He is God." The Lord, He is God! The contest was over. The one true God had revealed himself in a way that no one could ever forget. Their hearts, once divided, were now turned back to the Lord. With the people's allegiance now firmly back with the God of Israel, Elijah gives a command. The 450 prophets of Baal, who had led the nation astray with their false religion and deceitful practices, were seized. Their influence had to be removed for the spiritual health of the nation to be restored. Elijah had them taken down to the Kishon Valley and dealt with. This wasn't an act of personal revenge. It was an act of divine judgment, cleansing the land from the idolatry that had caused so much suffering and had led to the terrible drought. It was a necessary, though harsh, step to purify the nation and re-establish the covenant relationship with God. But the story doesn't end there. The proof of Baal's fraud was complete, and now it was time for the proof of the Lord's blessing. After this incredible display of God's power and judgment, Elijah tells King Ahab to go eat and drink because he hears the sound of a heavy rain. Remember, there had been a drought for 3.5 years. The sky was clear. There was no sign of rain, but Elijah heard it by faith. He climbs back up to the top of Carmel, bows down to the ground, and puts his face between his knees in a posture of earnest prayer. He sends his servant to go and look toward the sea. The servant goes, looks, and comes back. There is nothing. Elijah tells him, "Go again." This shows us the persistence of prayer. Elijah didn't give up after the first try. He kept praying, kept believing God's promise. Finally, on the 7th time, the servant reports, "A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." That was all the confirmation Elijah needed. He tells Ahab to hurry back to his chariot before the rain stops him. Soon, the sky grew black with clouds, the wind rose, and a heavy rain came down, ending the long drought. The Lord had not only proven He was the God of fire, but also the true God of the rain and fertility, restoring and blessing the very land that Baal had falsely claimed to control. Thanks for watching.